Another day and another underwhelming DCU first look. You have to start to wonder at some point what the actual goal is when you think about how this universe has been rolled out so far. It's been one lackluster reveal after another when WB and DC should be using these moments to try to build hype for some of these projects. I mean, for me personally, I was actually interested in the Lantern series to a certain degree. And I was kind of hoping that the first official thing that we see from this series was this mind-blowing image that made me want to see it even more. But no, what we have instead is just another bare-bones reveal. And I'm starting to feel like that the DCU is actually allergic to putting their best foot forward. Because underwhelming reveals has unfortunately become the norm when it comes to the DCU. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
So yes, we got our first official look at Aaron Pierre and Kyle Chandler as Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan in Lanterns. And one can assume, based on this image, that rumors of the series being a bit more grounded than you would expect might be true. Now obviously, for me personally, I do not have an issue with superheroes being grounded in reality. In fact, some of my favorite comic book movies of all time did that very thing to great effect. But I do think it is a little bit strange for this project in particular for a couple of reasons. For one, the response to this does once again seem a little bit hypocritical when you consider what real DC fans have been asking for years.
My, how the tables have turned.
All I've heard from DCU advocates is that they want their comic book movies to once again embrace the fantastical. A lot of people, for some reason, have become frustrated with the Christopher Nolan and Matt Reeves grounded approach. Granted, they only really did that with the character of Batman, which is in itself a somewhat grounded character, but I digress. Because when it comes to the Green Lanterns, those characters, those stories, are about as fantastical as it gets. And you would think that a new universe that is going to try to embrace that would want to reintroduce these characters in a way that showcases it. But no, instead, the first time we see Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart, it looks like they just walked off the set of True Detective. Now don't get me wrong, I love True Detective, and I do love the idea of making the Green Lanterns embrace their law enforcement and detective sides. But all things considered, wouldn't it make a lot more sense for them to embrace the cosmic side of these characters as well?
That makes sense.
Now, I can only assume that the thought process behind this is that they want to distance themselves from the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern as much as possible. And I do understand that to a degree for general audiences. That might be the only Green Lantern story that they've ever seen. But as of right now, as a fan, if you put a gun to my head and said which of these two pictures better represents the Green Lanterns as characters, unfortunately, I'm going to have to say the Ryan Reynolds one. I'm sure all of you have seen the complaints being hurled around the internet, mostly directed at people like Matt Reeves, with people basically telling creators like him to not make comic book movies if they don't want to make comic book movies. In other words, if you aren't going to embrace the camp and ridiculousness of it all, then don't bother.
No, don't like that.
Now, obviously, I do not agree with that narrow-minded point of view. I think there's room for more grounded stories, as well as the more fantastical ones. To me, I find fresh interpretations of these characters by talented filmmakers to be a lot more exciting. I am not the type of person that needs a page-by-page adaptation of a comic that I've already read. So under normal circumstances, taking this type of direction for a Green Lantern story might have actually piqued my interest. But here's the problem. I've been told for years that this is precisely what real DC fans do not want. They want 100% comic accuracy, at least they say they do, and to me, these images do not represent that. So again, I have to ask the question, who is the DCU actually being made for? And I continue to ask that question because every single time someone tries to explain it to me, the answer seems to get more and more convoluted. Take this for instance. Showrunner Chris Mundy said that this series is not a part of the DCU's larger storytelling plan, and that, quote, Season 1 is designed to be its own complete season of television that hopefully will become many seasons. So it exists in the DCU, but it's also its own thing, and is not impacted in any way by any kind of overarching story. I'm sorry, but that sounds suspiciously like a standalone story more than it does an entry into a shared universe. I'll remind you that prior to this reboot, I was the one who was advocating for that approach as it pertains to the future of DC. But it seems to me that they are only expressing that it is part of the DCU to appease those people on the internet who live and die by the idea of another shared universe.
But why?
Not to mention, this contradicts what James Gunn himself once said about the Lantern series. He said that throughout the course of this show, the Lanterns uncover a mystery that ties into a larger story in the DCU. Now, I know that some people think that me criticizing something is the same thing as me blindly hating something, but let's analyze this for a moment. How can you not see that constantly revealing things, or constantly trying to explain things, made the DCU already feel messy, and we haven't even seen a completed project yet? Like Stephen Amell once said, I hear a lot of plans, but I don't see a lot of execution. Imagine for a second we lived in a world where we didn't know anything about this series. A situation where we would not have a showrunner and a producer executive contradicting themselves. And in that situation, this is the first image that we see. Now, you would still have some people asking, where are their Green Lantern outfits?
What the hell am I looking at? When does this happen in the movie?
But I do think if there was a bit more mystery around this project, a reveal like this wouldn't make people ask so many questions. And this has kind of been my point this entire time. There's just been too much talking. And I do think that it has negatively impacted the way that a lot of people already see the DCU. I think some people, like myself, prefer the movies and series that we watch to speak for themselves. And to be clear, this philosophy doesn't just apply to the DCU. I hate it when any actor, or any producer, or writer, or director comes out and has to explain to us what their movie or series is about. To me, if you have to explain things that much, then you are not doing your job. And to me, this is a very valid criticism, whether people want to admit it or not.
Man, I'm tired of being right.
And here's the crazy part about all of this. I still have a morbid curiosity about how this series is going to end up. And that's mostly because I just recognize how much untapped cinematic potential there is with characters like this. My only request is that the people involved with making these projects would stop getting in their own way, and I wish the DCU would present itself to the public a little bit better than it has so far.
Y'all be cool. Shut up.